Honestly, I think that less people are critically thinking today than there were at least 50 years ago, because before that point too, there was even less people critically thinking, I think, because at that point in time, number one, they didn't have much access to information back in the medieval times and before the medieval times, when people were believing like all sorts of strange things, with paganism and all these sorts of things. And then they were just blindly trusting their governments and kings. They were trusting the monarchy, whatever monarchy they were under. They weren't really critically thinking, and mainly because their thought processes were, I could be wrong about this, but I think that their thought processes were mostly like, oh, I should listen to authority because that's the right thing to do. And with the authority at that point in time, basically always came morality, because there was this concept of where I forgot the exact term for it, but it's where the kinship was basically appointed by God. So that's what people thought. They thought if you're the king, you're there because God wanted the king, that specific king, to be there at that point in time. So then people just listen to the king and without really critically thinking too much about it. But then now, fast forward to the modern day, it's it's not it is pretty different. Number one, people have access to way more information. Number two, people now, they are really addicted to certain things. Like, for example, the internet. Like, people are just so addicted to the internet, and they get a lot of their opinions, if not all of their opinions, basically, or the majority of their opinions, from the internet or from where they were born, from their socioeconomic and cultural area in which they were born. And then the main thing, though, is because of this internet addiction, other addictions of how they spend their time, whether they spend the time just like going to a bar or something to feel better in the moment, they're not actively pushing their mind and trying to find out more truth. Instead, they would rather just numb themselves to reality instead of trying to improve their knowledge about the world and trying to make a big impact in the world. Most people are not trying to make a big impact in the world. They'll say they are if you ask them, but really, by their actions, they're not. They're lying when they say that they are, because your actions reflect something completely different from what your words are saying. So, therefore, you're lying. And seems like a lot of people are just willing to lie more and more these days. Just look at what happened in 2020 when everybody knew. I think everybody deep down knew that the whole thing was just like not the actual thing that it was said to be. The whole thing was blown out of proportion, and then we could see how little people were willing to fight for their freedom and for their sense of morals and this sort of thing for the sake of self-preservation. And it's unfortunate, very unfortunate, because it's a sign of what can easily happen in the future. Most people are like drones, I think. When you see other people saying those sorts of ideas and spreading them on the internet, like, most people are not really critically thinking and most people are drones. I think that those people saying that are correct, because you can look back at the past too. So many wars were fought for not justifiable reasons. The reasons were not justifying a war in many cases, and yet the war was still fought. Why is that? It's because people were not critically thinking and people were not willing to go against the culture or whatever for the sake of their self-preservation. And I guess it's a pretty normal thing to do. And it's hard to do otherwise. It's easy to sit here and judge and say that they did the wrong thing. But then it just comes down to the point of how are you living your life? How am I living my life? Are we critically thinking, or are we just getting all of our opinions from somebody else? Are we acting in accordance with our ethics, or do we let our ethics slide and become disintegrated in exchange for physical comfort? Is physical comfort more important, and your ego, is your physical comfort and your ego more important than your, if you believe in a soul, I do, is it more important than your soul? If you don't believe in a soul, then I don't know what to say about that. But yeah, that's it for this video. Peace.